everyone, welcome back to the Landmark Judgment series. Today we are covering a judgment that was decided just weeks ago on 11th March 2026. It is called Harish Rana versus Union of India. This is a 286-page judgment of Supreme Court of India. I have read every single page of it so that you don't have to. And in the next 30 minutes, I am going to break it down in a way that you will never forget. Now, let me ask you something before we begin. Imagine a person completely unable to move, unable to speak, unable to feel. Doctors have confirmed there is no hope of recovery. That person is being kept alive via machine. The question is, should that machine run forever? Or should that person be allowed to go peacefully? This question sounds philosophical. But for your CLAT exam, it is one of the most important legal questions you will ever study. Because this question sits right at the heart of Article 21 of the Constitution of India, the right to life. And the Supreme Court in this case gave a landmark answer. The right to live with dignity includes the right to die with dignity. So let us go. First, the story, then the law, and then your CLAT preparation. Let us begin. The year was 2030. There was a young man named Harish Rana. He was from Delhi. He was 20 years old studying B.Tech at Punjab University. A normal, ordinary young man with his whole life ahead of him. Dreams, ambitions, a family that loved him. You know the kind, just like many of you sitting and watching this right now. Then, on the evening of 20th of August 2013, something terrible happened. Harish fell from the 4th floor of his paying guest accommodation. He was rushed to the nearest hospital. The doctors examined him and found he had suffered a diffuse axonal injury, which means the nerve fibers inside his brain were torn apart across multiple regions. The internal wiring of his brain was destroyed. He was immediately shifted to the Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research in Chandigarh and later to AIIMS New Delhi for intensive treatment. Treatment after treatment was tried. Conservative management, anti-seizure medication, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, multiple surgeries, but nothing worked. Slowly, Harish slipped into a condition that doctors called persistent vegetative state, PVS. Today, Harish Rana is 32 years old. 13 years have passed since that accident. And in those 13 years, this is what his life has looked like. He lies in a bed, his eyes open, but they do not see. He breathes, but he does not feel. You call his name, he does not respond. You touch him, there is no reaction. You apply painful pressure, there is no grimace, no expression, nothing. He has no awareness of himself. He has no awareness of his environment. He cannot communicate in any form. He cannot swallow food or water. So in 2013, a tube was surgically placed inside his stomach, called a PEG tube, percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy tube. Through this tube, liquid nutrition is pumped into his body. This tube has to be replaced at a hospital every 2 months. He also has a tracheostomy tube in his throat to assist his breathing and a urinary catheter. He has been bedridden for 13 years despite the most attentive care. He regularly suffers from painful bed sores, infection and pneumonia. His most recent hospitalization was in May 2025. His mother, an ordinary woman, has been by his side every single day for 13 years. She turns him over at night so bed sores do not get worse. She manages his tube, she takes him to the hospital, she sits beside him, she waits and she watches her son, who was once a bright, ambitious engineering student, lie there completely still. Year after year after year. Doctors have confirmed his neurological condition is static. There is no improvement, there will be no improvement. His disability certificate says 100% permanent physical disability. This condition is irreversible. So, his parents went to court, not because they stopped loving him, but because they loved him too much to keep watching him suffer. They said, our son is not living, he is suffering. Please allow him to go in peace. Please let him die with dignity. They went to the Delhi High Court. The High Court said he is not being kept alive mechanically. There is no need for judicial intervention. His parents appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in 2024 directed the government to provide him care at home. But they also gave the parents liberty to come back if needed. And the parents came back because Harish kept suffering. And this time in 2026, the Supreme Court listened. Concept 1. What is euthanasia? The word euthanasia comes from Greek. Eu means God and thanatos means death. So euthanasia literally means a good death, allowing someone to die peacefully to end their suffering. It is also called mercy killing. Now, the law divides euthanasia into two types and both are tested in CLAT. You must know them cold. Type 1, active euthanasia. This means doing something that directly causes death. For example, giving a lethal injection, administering a drug that kills the patient. You are actively causing death. This is illegal in India. It remains illegal even after his 2026 judgment. Active euthanasia is not permitted under any Indian law. Type 2 is passive euthanasia. This means withdrawing or withholding medical treatment that is artificially keeping a person alive. You are not doing something to cause death. You are stopping something that was preventing natural death. For example, removing a ventilator from a patient who has no brain activity, or as in Harish, case, removing a feeding tube. This is legal in India, but only under strict conditions with medical board approval and judicial oversight. The simplest way to remember this: active euthanasia is doing something to kill. Passive euthanasia is stopping something that was preventing natural death. The distinction is fundamental and comes up directly in CLAT legal reasoning. Concept 2, Article 21 and the right to dignity. Article 21 of the Constitution says, no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. Now, here is the question that confuses many students. Article 21 gives the right to life. How does it connect to dying? This is where the Supreme Court's expansive interpretation of Article 21 becomes crucial. The court has said over decades that Article 21 does not merely protect biological existence, it protects life lived with dignity. It is not enough to simply be alive. You must be able to live as a human being with autonomy, with dignity, with the ability to make choices about your own body. So the court asked, if a person is lying in bed with no awareness, no hope of recovery, no ability to experience anything, and is being forcibly kept alive by a machine, is that a life? Is that what Article 21 protects? The answer the court gave is no. Forcing someone to exist in that condition is itself a violation of their dignity. And therefore, the court declared, the right to die with dignity is a part of right to live with dignity under Article 21. Write this line down, memorize it. This is directly quotable in CLAT answers. Concept 3, Advanced Medical Directive. Imagine you are healthy today, but tomorrow there is an accident and you are in a coma. You cannot speak, you cannot communicate. Who then decides what medical treatment you will receive or refuse? An Advanced Medical Directive or AMD solves this problem. It is a legal document that you write while you are healthy, stating what medical treatment you want or do not want. If you ever become incapacitated, it is also called a living will. The Supreme Court in Common Cause versus Union of India 2018 declared that AMDs are legally valid in India. In Harish's case, he has only 20 years old when the accident happened. He had never made a AMD, so the court could not look at his wishes because there was no record of them. Instead, the court had to decide based on what was in his best interest. This is a critical distinction that we will come to shortly. Concept 4, CANH, medical treatment or basic care. This was one of the central legal questions in this case. CANH, clinically assisted nutrition and hydration, the feeding tube keeping Harish alive. The family argued it is medical treatment that can be withdrawn. The other side could argue it is simply feeding, basic care which you cannot take away from any human being. This distinction matters enormously. Medical treatment can be withdrawn in certain conditions. Basic care like keeping someone clean, warm and comfortable cannot be withdrawn. The Supreme Court gave a clear answer. CANH is medical treatment. The court reasoned that it requires surgery to implant, medical expertise to manage, regular hospital visits to replace, and continuous monitoring. It is not the same as someone feeding a patient by spoon. It is an invasive medical intervention. And because it is medical treatment, it can be withdrawn, subject to the best interest test. The judgment did not arrive in isolation. It is part of a long legal journey that spans 15 years. You need to know this timeline for CLAT. 2011, Aruna Shanbag versus Union of India. This was India's first major Supreme Court case on passive euthanasia. Aruna Shanbag was a nurse at KEM hospital in Mumbai. In 1973, she was brutally assaulted by a hospital worker and she entered a persistent vegetative state. For 36 years, she lay in that condition. In 2011, the Supreme Court allowed passive euthanasia for the first time, but with extremely strict guidelines, and only with the permission of the High Court, it was a beginning. But the process was slow and complicated. In 2018, Common Cause versus Union of India. This is a landmark judgment. The 5-judge Constitution bench of the Supreme Court decided this case. It formally and definitively recognized the right to die with dignity as part of Article 21. It validated advanced medical directives, living wills as legally enforceable. It laid down detailed guidelines for how passive euthanasia could work in India. This case is a must-know for every CLAT aspirant. 2023, Common Cause versus Union of India 2023, a follow-up to the 2018 case. The court acknowledged that the 2018 guidelines were difficult for hospitals to implement in practice. So it simplified and modified the procedural framework to make it more workable. 2026 that we have right now is Harish Rana versus Union of India, this case. Now for the first time, the framework was applied to a real specific patient before the court. The court confirmed that CANH is medical treatment. It elaborated the best interest test in unprecedented detail. It improved the procedural framework further, and it issued a strong call to Parliament to finally pass a comprehensive law. This is most detailed euthanasia judgment India has ever produced. The Supreme Court in this case addressed 5 specific questions. Let me take you through each one clearly. Question number 1. Is CANH medical treatment? The family's argument, the PEG tube is medical treatment. It can be withdrawn under the framework of Common Cause 2018. The opposing view was this is just feeding basic care. You cannot take away food from a human being. In which court answered, CANH is a medical treatment. The court went through the medical literature, international cases and legal precedents from the USA, UK, Ireland, Australia and multiple other jurisdictions. Every major jurisdiction treats clinically assisted nutrition and hydration as a medical intervention. The court held the same position for India. CANH requires surgical implantation, medical management, clinical monitoring, and regular hospital procedures. It is categorically different from ordinary feeding. Therefore, it can be withdrawn subject to the best interest test. Question 2. What is the best interest of the patient's test? This is the heart of the judgment. When a patient cannot speak for themselves, when there is no AMD, no record of wishes, how do we decide whether to withdraw treatment? The court laid down a detailed best interest test. It is not a single formula, it is multi-factor framework. The court was careful to say no single factor is decisive. It is always a holistic assessment. Here are the key factors. Factor 1. Is there any actual benefit to the patient from continuing treatment? Not to the family, not to the doctors, to the patient. Factor 2. Does the treatment serve any therapeutic purpose? It is making the patient better, or is it simply maintaining biological existence with no recovery in sight? Factor 3. Is the patient's condition irreversible? Is there any medically recognized prospects of recovery? Factor 4. What level of indignity in the patient experiencing? What is the degree of dependence, pain and loss of human dignity resulting from the condition and its treatment? Factor 5. What do the medical experts say? Both the primary medical board and the secondary medical board must give their independent opinions. Factor 6. What are the views of the patient's family or next of kin? Their views are important, but they are not decisive on their own. Factor 7. Is the treatment medically futile? Is there any reasonable clinical justification for continuing it? The court also emphasized something very important about how to frame the question. The starting question must not be, is it in the patient's best interest to end the treatment? That framing presupposes death. The correct starting question is it the patient's best interest that treatment which artificially prolongs life should be continued? That framing begins from life and asks whether continuation serves any purpose. This difference in framing is subtle but legally significant. And critically, the court confirmed that there is a strong presumption in favor of life. The default position is always to preserve life. This presumption can only be overridden when it is clearly established through the factors above that continuing treatment serves no benefit and only prolongs suffering and indignity. Question 3. Applying the test to Harish Rana specifically. The court constituted 2 independent medical boards to evaluate Harish. The primary medical board doctors from the hospital examined Harish and submitted their report. The second medical board appointed by the chief medical officer independently examined Harish separately and submitted their report. Both the boards reached identical conclusions. First, Harish is in a confirmed permanent vegetative state. Second, there has been no neurological improvement in 13 years. There will be no improvement. Third, CANH keeps him biologically alive but offers no therapeutic benefit whatsoever. Fourth, continued treatment is medically futile. Fifth, he experiences significant indignity, bed sores, repeated infections, complete dependence, painful procedures. His parents and siblings also told the court, "We have watched him suffer for 13 years. We firmly believe there is no point in continuing treatment. We want him to go in peace." After considering all of this, the court gave its conclusion. It is not in Harish's best interest to continue treatment and artificially prolong his life. The court authorized the withdrawal of CANH. This was not a casual decision. It was supported by 13 years of medical history, 2 independent medical boards, and a detailed legal framework. Question 4. What is the process, step by step? The court refined the procedural framework from 2018 to make it more practical. Here is how the process works. Step 1. The family or treating doctor applies to the hospital's primary medical board, a committee of doctors at the treating hospital. They evaluate whether withdrawal is in the patient's best interest. Step 2. If the primary medical board agrees, the case goes to the secondary medical board, appointed independently by the chief medical officer. This provides a completely separate and independent opinion. It is a crucial safeguard against misuse. Step 3. If both boards agree that withdrawal is in the patient's best interest, a reconsideration period is given. The family has time to reflect and can change their mind if they wish. Step 4. After the reconsideration period, treatment can be withdrawn, but palliative care continues, meaning pain management and comfort care go on. The patient is not abandoned. They are kept comfortable. Step 5. At any stage, any person can approach the court if they object. Judicial oversight is always available. This is a key safeguard. The court also noted that for patients being treated at home, not in hospitals, special provisions are needed because the primary medical board mechanism does not naturally apply. The court gave directions to bridge this procedural gap. Question number 5. What did the court say to Parliament? This part of the judgment is equally important and often overlooked by students. The court issued a very strong direction to Parliament. The court traced the legislative history. In 1996, the Law Commission of India submitted its 196th report recommending a law on passive euthanasia. In 2012, it submitted the 241st report with similar recommendations. In 2018, the Constitution Bench in Common Cause again urged Parliament to legislate. In 2024, the government finally released a draft set of guidance. But it was still not a comprehensive statute. The court said, this is not acceptable. Courts have been filling the gap through judicial pronouncements for 15 years. Doctors face uncertainty because there is no clear statutory law. Hospitals struggle to implement guidelines that exist only through court orders. Patients and families suffer because the process is unclear and inaccessible. Parliament has had decades to act and has not acted. The court's message was unambiguous. Parliament must enact a comprehensive statutory framework on passive euthanasia and end-of-life care without further delay. This direction to the legislature is itself historically significant. Before we move to the CLAT prep, I want to share something that I think every law student should hear. At the very end of this judgment, Justice K.V. Viswanathan wrote a postscript. He did not write about legal doctrines, he wrote about Harish's parent. He wrote about how for over 12 years, these parents, two ordinary human beings, had left no stone unturned in caring for their son. How they had tried every treatment, how they had sat by his bedside through every hospitalization, every infection, every painful procedure, and how finally, when it became clear there was no return, they came to court, and to abandon their son, but to free him from what he was enduring. Justice Viswanathan then quoted an ancient Sanskrit verses. Chitta chinta, dyor madhay chinta, tatra garyasi. Chitta dahati, nirjivam, chinta dahati, savijvakam. The translation between the funeral pyre and mental anguish, it is a mental anguish that is a greater burden. The funeral pyre burns only the dead, but mental anguish burns the living. The judge said, once this order is implemented, the distress that these parents experience watching their son suffer, that will at least be over. Their anguish, which has burned them alive for 13 years, will end. This is what the law is actually for, not just rules and doctrines, but to reach into the deepest human sufferings and provide relief. This is what this judgment does, and that is why it is a landmark. Let us deep dive now in the exam preparation. Let us know what is actually essential for you to memorize. The case name is Harish Rana versus Union of India, citation 2026, INSC 222, date decided 11th March 2026, Court Supreme Court of India, Judges Justice J.B. Padiwala and Justice K.V. Viswanathan. Articles involved were Article 21, right to life and personal liberty. Core principle, right to die with dignity, is a part of Article 21. Active euthanasia, illegal in India. Passive euthanasia, legal India with safeguards. AMD, Advanced Medical Directive. Living will, legally valid since Common Cause 2018. CANH, clinically assisted nutrition and hydration, held to be medical treatment in this case. PVS, persistent vegetative state. Patient has sleep-wake cycles but zero awareness or voluntary response. Key prior cases are Common Cause versus Union of India 2018, 5-judge Constitution Bench. First case, Aruna Shanbag versus Union of India 2011. I really hope you liked this video. For more such videos, subscribe the channel now. And that is the story of Harish Rana, a 20-year-old engineering student who fell from building in 2013 and whose parents fought in court for over a decade, not to keep him but to give him peace. This judgment is important for your CLAT preparation for several reasons.